What distinguishes humans from the divine is not the physical body, nor is it time itself. It is forgetting. Forgetting that we are divine beings, and that our souls are as old as the universe itself. Among the many spiritual paths that have attempted to awaken humans to their heavenly roots, few are as profound, complete, and boldly revealing as Hermeticism. In today's fast-paced, shallow world full of constant distractions, most people look for instant relief from the pain that needs to be listened to, not pushed aside. But the Hermeticist isn't after comfort. He doesn't seek ready-made solutions or quick explanations. What he seeks is the key, the one that opens the ultimate door. And that key isn't found in books, teachers, or systems. It lies deep within, hidden beneath 7 layers. Finding it doesn't mean going outward, but diving ever deeper within. This video doesn't offer instructions, it offers direction. It's a map for those who wish to live as true Hermeticists in the midst of urban life, buzzing phones, and the constant digital noise of an unconscious world. If you're still with us, maybe you're ready to remember. Silence is almost unbearable to a mind raised in noise. Most people, when they find themselves without sound, quickly replace the silence with thoughts, memories, fears, or daydreams. We struggle with silence because it reveals our true self, and most aren't ready to face that without their masks. Yet silence is not nothingness, it is presence. A fertile, living space where only what is real can arise. In Hermetic tradition, silence is more than a noble trait. It is a spiritual science, a method of listening inward. In the sacred rooms of Egyptian temples, the first step for the neophyte wasn't spoken, it was the absence of sound. Those who entered the mysteries were stripped of stimuli and placed in darkness and complete silence. What might seem like punishment today was actually the beginning of communication with the unseen realm. As written in the Book of the Dead, the silence of the heart is where the gods dwell. Hermes Trismegistus, the greatest of masters, saw silence as the birthplace of the logos, the creative word's womb. Before words can be spoken, they must be heard, and true listening only happens in silence. Although modern science still hesitates when facing the unseen, it is beginning to understand the depth of this ancient practice. Research by the Institute for Cognitive Sciences at the University of Helsinki found that just 2 minutes of absolute silence activates parts of the brain linked to emotions and sensory integration even more than extended exposure to music. In short, silence reshapes the mind. But surface-level silence isn't enough for the Hermeticist. He pursues silence not only around him, but within his thoughts, and even deeper, within his very identity. This is the silence that comes when the self no longer tries to control, analyze, or explain. It is the silence of surrender to the flow of the all. The Corpus Hermeticum says, "Give up the word if you want to hear the divine word." This isn't poetry, it's a direct teaching. What we refer to as divine voice, intuition, or gnosis cannot be heard if the mind is filled with noise. To live as a Hermeticist today means intentionally making space for silence. Not to run away, but to connect. Not to be passive, but to invite what is real. Silence becomes a discipline, an unseen laboratory where awareness is purified. In that stillness, the alchemist begins to evaporate the thick clouds of ego until only a clear, formless essence is left behind. When done in the spirit of Hermeticism, meditation isn't about trying to focus. It is about giving your attention as an offering. The aim isn't to force the mind into silence. It's to listen beyond the mind itself. As Plotinus, a direct successor of the Hermetic path through the Neoplatonic stream, once said, "The mind must go blind in order to see through the soul's light." In Hermetic tradition, silence is always the first step in any ritual. No energy is summoned, no symbols are drawn, and no sacred names are spoken unless silence has first been established, both externally and within. Words only carry true power when they arise from a space of inner purity. Even when surrounded by the chaos of modern life, the Hermeticist treats silence as a sacred duty, just as a priest tends carefully to his altar. He rises before the noise of the world, not for productivity, but to hear. He walks silently, eats quietly, reflects in stillness, not out of habit, but out of sacred purpose. Because he understands that only in silence can truth appear without distortion. And slowly, silence stops being a scheduled practice and becomes a constant presence. The body still moves, the mouth still speaks, the tasks of life are done. But deep inside, stillness remains. A calm center exists even in the swirl of life around him. This is the beginning. Without it, all spiritual effort is just disguised noise. But with it, even the smallest actions, drinking water, watching clouds, or washing dishes, become sacred expressions. Silence isn't the opposite of speech. It is the source from which all true words are born. And it is within this silent cradle that the Hermeticist begins to remember his true nature. Long before the body was viewed as a machine, it was regarded as a sacred temple. And even before it was seen as a temple, it was honored as a mirror of the stars, of the soul, and of the universal laws. The Hermeticist follows this age-old understanding, where the body is not a burden or a barrier, but a gateway, a living space in which the great work can take form. Unlike belief systems that cast the body as unclean or lesser, Hermetic teachings affirm that the body is the visible reflection of what is unseen. As the Emerald Tablet states, "As above, so below, as below, so above, to achieve the wonders of the One." The body is that sacred below, mirroring the soul's archetypes. The heart represents the sun within. The liver mirrors the force of Mars. The kidneys reflect the scales of Libra. This isn't superficial astrology. It's a deep insight into the body as a miniature universe, a physical expression of higher forces woven into matter. But how can this sacred view be lived in a society that treats the body as nothing more than a machine for work, or at best, an object for show? The answer, through daily reconsecration. The Hermeticist blesses the body not through outer rituals, but by internal devotion. He eats as though nourishing a divine being. He breathes as if calling a spirit into form. He moves with purpose, aware that every gesture is an expression of what made visible. Alchemy teaches us that transformation needs a vessel, something pure and sealed where the elements can be broken down, cleansed, and rejoined. That vessel is the body. And if the body is unwell, divided, or constantly distracted, then no true alchemy can occur. Paracelsus, the 16th century healer and alchemist, said, "The body is the spirit's laboratory, and blood is its mercury. Within the blood lie our memories, feelings, past wounds, and visions. Breath is the fire that heats this internal cauldron. Food becomes the base material for change. Sleep is the moment of dissolution. Nothing is ordinary. Everything is sacred ritual." Even modern science is starting to notice glimpses of this ancient truth. Epigenetics shows that what we feel, where we live, and how we think can shift our gene expression. The body is not fixed. It changes not only by physical means, but also through awareness. What the ancients described as energy, vibration, and life force, we now understand as electromagnetic fields, cell resonance, and biophotonic waves. Yet, the Hermeticist doesn't need lab results to treat the body as sacred. He senses it. He listens to it. He honors it. That's why, to live as a Hermeticist today is to move slower, to be present while eating, bathing, or walking. It means turning simple actions like stretching into rituals that open subtle energies. It means treating rest not as escape, but as an offering to the spirit within the flesh. It's not about obsessing over fitness or glorifying appearances. What truly matters is shaping the body to be strong enough to carry spiritual energy. Because when the force of spirit begins to move, A body that isn't prepared can't handle it. It breaks down. Many who pursue spiritual practices burn out, not due to danger in the path itself, but because their physical form isn't refined enough to carry the energy flow. This is why breathing plays a central role in Hermetic discipline. Breath is the most immediate and natural way to bring harmony between the body, the mind, and the spirit. It is the breath of the divine within us. When we breathe consciously, slowly, deeply, and in silence, we awaken subtle inner pathways that may have become dormant. What the Hindus call prana, the Greeks named pneuma, and the Hebrews called ruach, all refer to the same sacred truth. There is something within the air that is beyond mere oxygen. There is spirit. In ancient Hermetic rites, breath always came before any invocation. This wasn't by accident. Breath sets the stage. It creates the space in which transformation can begin. The human body is the secret chamber where eternal forces blend. Earth, solid in the bones, provides structure. Water, circulating in the bloodstream, holds memory. Fire, alive in our energy and desires, initiates action. Air, through inhalation and exhalation, connects the seen with the unseen. And ether, silent and subtle, lives in our awareness and keeps all things unified. When we begin to see the body as a sacred space, everything we do to it becomes significant. What we consume is an offering. What we feel is a message. What we act out through the body is a sacred ceremony. There is no real spirituality that denies the body. There is no transcendence without being consciously rooted in our physical existence. Hermes Trismegistus taught, all is one, and the one reveals itself in all. And the very first place that oneness expresses itself is in this body, this temporary dwelling, this moving sanctuary, this fragile vessel. And when it is purified, it can hold divine essence like a chalice holds wine. And so, the modern Hermeticist walks quietly among others. If the body is the sacred house, then the mind is its altar, where the fire of the spirit can either be lit or extinguished. Like any altar, it can serve to bless or defile, depending on what is placed upon it. In Hermetic teachings, the mind is not considered the enemy of the spirit. It isn't automatically an ally either. The mind is neutral, and in its neutrality, it can be dangerous. The Kybalion begins with the law of mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. This isn't merely a concept to grasp. It's a profound responsibility. If all that exists is rooted in mind, then everything we experience mirrors the state of our own mental structure. Reality at this level acts like a mirror, but a mirror can only show what's real when it's clean. The modern mind, however, is fogged, cluttered with noise, cultural conditioning, unresolved emotions, and unchecked desires. We think we're thinking, but most of the time we're simply reacting. Today's mind is like a home where uninvited guests have settled in, and the true owner has forgotten who he is. To live as a Hermeticist is first and foremost to reclaim authority over that inner domain. It means tending to the mind with the care of a spiritual gardener, not judging the weeds, but also not letting them take over. The Hermeticist watches the mind, and in watching, he changes it. As we mentioned before, silence prepares the ground, but it is discernment that chooses what to grow. At this stage, the mind is not just a mirror, it becomes a sword. A sword that cuts, separates, and defines boundaries. With a well-trained mind, the Hermeticist slices through illusions one by one, about the self, about the world, about others, and even about the divine. For only those who lift the veils can see what is real. Plato, an inheritor of Hermetic wisdom through the Pythagorean and Orphic traditions, taught that true knowledge is remembering. The soul doesn't need new information. It needs to recover what it already knows. So the mind must be sharpened, not by adding more facts, but by clearing away what blocks that inner remembrance. The Hermetic mind is not a library, it is focused clarity. This isn't a denial of reason. In fact, it's the opposite. Reason, when refined by silence and directed by intuition, becomes a partner in revelation. Hermes never divided logic and spirit. He wove them together. Hermes didn't separate logic from spirit. He unified them. But in that integration, reason was never meant to dominate. Its purpose is to serve something higher. This idea also appears in depth psychology, particularly in the work of Carl Gustav Jung, who was heavily influenced by Gnosticism and Hermetic philosophy. Jung famously said that enlightenment doesn't come by imagining light, but by facing the darkness within. The Hermetic mind doesn't run from the shadow, it examines it, because it understands that the gold of awareness is buried deep within the unconscious. In the inner lab of the Hermeticist, every thought is tested like an alchemical substance. What does it yield? Does it bring openness or restriction, insight or confusion, love or fear? The Hermeticist doesn't become his thoughts. He observes them, and by observing, he transforms them into meaningful symbols that serve the work. Practices like deep questioning in the Socratic style, using archetypes, interpreting dreams, journaling, and active imagination. All these can be valuable tools for the Hermetic path, provided they're used with sincere purpose and clear attention. The mind is like a crystal. It can either focus divine light or scatter it, depending on how it's angled. But the journey doesn't stop there. Beyond its reflective power, the mind becomes a portal. When it's purified, silenced, and in harmony with the heart, it opens to higher planes, not as fantasy, but as expanded awareness. At that point, the mind becomes a vessel of gnosis, pure, direct, and unshakable inner knowing. This gnosis isn't theoretical, it's experiential. The mind, when sharpened to reflect truth and cut through illusion, becomes an extension of divine will. No longer working for ego or personal craving, it aligns with the whole. And when the mind reaches this stage, it is no longer a place of conflict. It becomes a creative space, a mirror that clearly reflects the divine, and a sword that firmly defends truth. Thus, the modern Hermeticist doesn't reject the mind. He refines it, hones it, aligns it. And when its role is complete, he releases it like a tool that has fulfilled its task. Will is the flame that animates this entire path. It's what turns knowing into walking, insight into movement, desire into destiny. In Hermetic understanding, will is not mere want. It is a sacred fire, a fire that isn't extinguished by doubt or drowned by worldly distractions. Once lit, it burns for one purpose only, to fulfill the work. And what is the work? It is what brought you into existence. It is not something you choose, it chooses you. It's not a job, a mission, or a project. It is your soul's path. When human will aligns with the intelligence of the all, it can move heaven and earth. This isn't just symbolism, it's a universal truth. Will is where the small self and the cosmos meet. It's the divine spark piercing through matter. But true will doesn't arrive fully formed. It's refined like fire in the forge. It starts off mixed with personal wants, fear, confusion, and distraction. That's why every true Hermetic path includes the purification of will. And that purification comes through fire. It's the fire that burns hesitation, dissolves ego, and reduces illusion to ashes. The Corpus Hermeticum teaches, you cannot reach the highest while your will is divided. The Hermeticist knows this deeply. Every act of choosing is also an act of letting go. In today's world, filled with constant noise and competing demands, keeping the will focused is an act of true magic. Society fragments the self. It encourages action without intention, speech without reflection, motion without purpose. But the Hermeticist resists that current. He doesn't drift, he chooses. True will isn't forced. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And that whisper is only heard in silence. Often it shows up as discomfort, a sense of being out of place, or an intuition that won't go away. And when it's finally embraced, it offers no promises, only a deep inner knowing. This is the way. Not the fastest, not the easiest, but the truest. Aleister Crowley, often misunderstood but firmly rooted in Hermetic tradition, once wrote, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." The will he refers to is an impulse. It's the soul's true direction, unchanged by fear, unmoved by fashion. To find that will is to discover your original self, before any identity, before any story. It is to encounter the source that gave you life, still alive within you, calling you forward. That inner will, silent yet alive, emerges in everyday life through the act of the work. For the Hermeticist, life isn't just a sequence of experiences. It's a deliberate creation, an ongoing process of transformation where every single moment, joy, pain, failure, wonder, is used. Nothing is thrown away. Everything has value. Each day, he shapes his surroundings like an alchemist at the fire of his hidden workshop, not driven by control, but by deep respect for the creative process. His work may go unnoticed by the world. It may not be praised, but it has impact. His presence shifts the energy of a room. His words shift people's awareness. His actions become living symbols. The goal isn't to perform great miracles. It's to live in alignment. True will shows itself in small things. How a person listens, how they walk, how they choose their words. For one who lives with intention, no act is meaningless. Studies from the HeartMath Institute show that when our thoughts and emotions are aligned with intention, they influence not only our physical state, but the electromagnetic field around us. The will creates a field, an invisible pattern that shapes reality, just as a magnet arranges iron filings. In practical terms, this means that a focused and conscious will not only guides the individual, it reshapes the environment. But this effect only emerges when everything is aligned. Thoughts, emotions, speech, and action moving together in harmony. That unity is rare. And precisely because it's rare, it's powerful. When will is cleansed of ego, it turns into an offering. It doesn't strive to dominate. It seeks to serve. It no longer tries to control. It becomes an expression of the whole. And in that moment, life is no longer just living. It becomes the work itself. Not in a symbolic sense, but in a real Hermetic way. The great work, the magnum opus. It is the sacred process of transforming dense existence into radiant presence, turning lead into gold, a single spark into a living sun. The true Hermeticist is not defined by how much he knows, but by the devotion with which he lives. He has given his life to a single goal, to embody truth. And will is his path, his fire, his sacred blade. He walks the earth simply, but his steps carry power. He doesn't escape matter, he redeems it. He doesn't reject the world, he blesses it. Because he knows that spirit can only be fully known when it is fully embodied. In the end, the Hermeticist's aim is not to escape life, but to illuminate it.